Welcome back to Global. Let's return straight away to our main story, those events in Pakistan. Confirmation in the last few minutes that 141 people were killed in that Taliban attack on a school in Pakistan. The vast majority of those, 132, were children. Well, let's talk now to Shahid Qureshi, a journalist with the Pakistani newspaper Frontier Post and the BBC's Zaguna Kaga, who is here with us. She grew up in Peshawar and knows that tribal region very well. Thanks to both of you. Let's start because you know this region so well. And there have been attacks on schools before, haven't there?
Yes, especially in tribal region. Schools have been shut, schools have been burned. And as you said, I grew up in this area. But when I went to school in Peshawar, it was quite peaceful because I had escaped from Afghanistan, where schools were attacked. My school was attacked in Kabul. We became refugees in Peshawar. But in the last few years, there has always been militant attacks in Peshawar, especially because it's very close to border region, to the bordering area.
And in that sense, you say there are many attacks in that area, but it would seem that no one ever thought that an attack like this would happen on a school, deliberately targeting the children there.
Yes, in Peshawar, in Pakistan, it's unprecedented. In Afghanistan, it happens. Schools get attacked all the time. But in Pakistan, it's out of belief, really, for my friends who live in Peshawar still, and I have relatives living in Peshawar. They just couldn't imagine that the school will be attacked to this extent and children will be attacked in this way. Horrible.
Shahid, what do you think it says about the Taliban? Should we look at this by saying, well, despite everything that's happened since June in this military campaign, they are able to launch ferocious, deadly attacks? Or should we look at it that actually that military strategy has worked and this is somehow out of desperation, the last throes?
Well, it's a good question. What seems to have happened is that the military is on the one hand is doing its a bit, but the political government who's controlling the police and the security agencies has completely failed, as you mentioned in your report, at the attacks at the airport, on the civilian target, where the police is totally become as a mercenary force for the politicians, where they're not doing their job properly. So these terrorists who attacked the school, they must have been living somewhere where they've had a hideout somewhere. So this is the police's job to look for them or to find them and to stop them. So military is on the one hand doing its bit, but the political and the civilian police is completely failed to do the job.
Tell me more about that, because I was asking exactly that question to the High Commissioner. You will have heard that. And he was saying, no, in Pakistan there is unanimity now in condemnation of this, of alienating the Taliban. Is that not the case in terms of on the ground, in your perspective?
Let's put things in perspective, that what Pakistan has got in front of to deal with, and what resources Pakistan have. Pakistans do not have enough helicopters, for example, to fight with the terrorists in North Waziristan and the other tribal areas, which is very difficult to reach by normal means. Now, those helicopters can be provided by the United States, United Kingdom, or even the Russians were offering hands to Pakistan. Now, this is a logistical requirement. On the other hand, the police, which is politicized, as many politicians have said all over the country, is corrupt, is inefficient, is not doing its job properly, and that is causing the casualties more than it should have happened in the normal circumstances. For example, in Britain, the police is doing its job on the street, so the armed forces are able to fight the terrorists on the other side.
Yarguna, I was saying that you know this region particularly well. In terms of the military operation that we've seen since June, how effective has that been against the militants, the Taliban, in terms of just the amount of casualties that they have been taking?
Well, they have. In tribal region, they have kind of hit the militants. But what the militants are saying, that, or most of my friends who live there, they said they were worried for an attack like this in Peshawar specifically, because militants were not dismantled, but they spread. Some fled to Afghanistan through the border, some fled to Peshawar, which is like just a few hours drive from the tribal region. So it was like an easy way out for them. A lot of refugees came, and with them militants.
And the Pakistani authorities have long been criticised for almost a dual approach with those militants. Had things effectively changed fundamentally in the summer, where for the first time they were directly taken on and directly taken out?
Many tribal people will tell you that they wanted better education, better governance in the tribal region, and until those things don't come into effect by the government and support like that is not provided to them, these militancy is like far from being dismantled or being finished.
Well, that's very interesting. Just as you were talking, just the latest, I was giving the latest casualty figures and the death toll that has come from the army. Just another very interesting line from the same briefing there that's being reported, because the authorities saying that the Taliban gunmen who attacked the school started firing as soon as they entered the school. There was no attempt to actually take hostages. They just started firing as soon as they got into the school. They also say they did actually bring some rations, so there was the potential perhaps to stay for longer. But a very interesting line there, that we have seen hostage situations, numerous hostage situations in the past, but it seems they came very much with the intent of doing exactly what we saw. I mean, psychologically, this wasn't a random attack. This was deliberately targeted because this was an army-run school, and they see the army as the people that have been carrying out the attacks on the militants. It was designed to psychologically damage the army, wasn't it?
Well, it was designed to psychological, because the terrorists feel that the army is the only fighting force which is fighting with these terrorists. They see some politicians are very naive. Nawaz Sharif hasn't taken any stronger line, which he should have taken in 1.5 years, which is spending more time in dealing with his internal politics, or his cronies are dealing with the corruption and all these kind of scandals coming out. The politicians are completely busy in corruption and in all those kind of issues. They're not worried about it.
And do you think this will change anything? It was again interesting listening to the High Commissioner, because when I asked him what change this might precipitate, he was saying we're already taking action, which didn't suggest perhaps any major change as a result from today. So in any sense, is it a watershed moment? Do you see anything being done dramatically different to what we've already seen?
Well, that's what, where I'll quote Imran Khan, where he keep on saying the politicians don't have their children in Pakistan. They have children in London, US or in Dubai. The politicians do not have their children in Pakistan. They don't go to the hospitals in Pakistan. They are completely detached with the reality that what the people in north and in tribal areas are suffering. There are not many politicians or prime minister or anybody who were visiting the armed forces and these IDPs who are responsible, who are really suffering from. So there is a political detachment with the reality, and the military is left to deal with this mess. That's the problem, the political and the civilian divide. And the civilian government and the Nawaz Sharif's government has been attacking the military on many occasions in the past 6 months. And they are in kind of a way in undermining the military operation.
Yes, a lukewarm support for this military strategy. Do you think that is likely then not to change from, I take it from what you've just said?
Well, I think the army is very clear about the objectives. They are going to go ahead.
Yes, but the support they get from the politicians.
Well, the politicians need to make up their mind what they want army to do, but army is going to go ahead because they are responsible for the sovereignty and the national interest of the country, and the politicians are going to be wiped out in the maybe coming elections or in coming months or years. Basically, there will be a problem for the politicians to face all this security situation and the corruption and the policing and the terrorism. So it's a lot of things to do.
Militarily, can the military, if they pursue this strategy and ramp it up, can they actually defeat the Taliban? Is that militarily possible?
It is militarily possible. They were able to clear off in Swat, for example. There was a successful operation where military was able to clear off this area with the terrorists. Now this North Waziristan, the operation started without the political support, and I must say, as many people say that. So they started. Now the political government is trying to take the credit from the military, and military is not saying anything about it.
Just very briefly, I mean, there is a danger, as this campaign continues, the military campaign, of seeing more attacks, not necessarily in terms of the intensity of today, but certainly more attacks as the Taliban feel that the squeeze is on them.
Yes, and also the tribal region which are attacked by the military, a lot of civilians die in that as well. So a lot of civilians who, it is again one of those situations that whenever these operations happen, it's not really finishing the militants, but it's like creating more. And this attack is one of the examples.
Well, I have to end it there, but Yarguna and Shahid, thank you very much for those thoughts. Well, let's get back to the situation on the ground. I gave you the update from the army a moment or two ago, but a short time ago, my colleague